Hello everyone, my name is Isabel Iriarte, and in this presentation I'll explore a crucial dilemma in US trade policy through the case of two iconic American companies, Nike and New Balance. Their opposing positions on import tariffs reveal more than just a business rivalry. They reflect a deeper challenge. In today's economy, where production is globally fragmented, it is just no longer clear whose interests trade policy serve. Should serve. Should serve. Hello everyone, my name is Isabel Iriarte, and in this presentation I'll explore a critical dilemma in US trade policy through the case of two iconic American companies, Nike and New Balance. Their opposing position on import tariffs reveal more than just a business rivalry. They reflect a deeper challenge. In today's economy, where production is globally fragmented, it is just no longer clear whose interest trade value should serve. Global value chains have blurred the line between domestic and foreign, challenging the idea that national companies automatically represent national interests. By analyzing this case, we'll uncover what's really at stake when designing trade policy in a highly interconnected world. Let's dive deeper into global value chains or GVCs. They have really transformed trade. They have redefined how goods are made with components sourced from dozens of countries and value added across continents. They allow companies to specialize to cut costs and access global talent. However, they also create some blind spots. When production is offshore and fragmented, accountability weakens. This means that labor standards, environmental protection, and even tax responsibilities become harder and harder to enforce. And while GVCs benefit consumers and high skilled workers, they often leave behind the very regions that trade policy once aimed to protect. This also means that trade policy is no longer just about protecting industries, it's about managing very, very complex systems of production where national borders don't define value creation. And this is exactly what the Trans Pacific Partnership tried to address. The Trans Pacific Partnership, or TPP, was the most ambitious trade deal the US had pursued in years. It was designed not just for economic gain, but also as a geopolitical strategy. Yes, to deepen the ties within the Asian Pacific, but also to set trade rules without China. As of 2013, 12 countries were negotiating the deal, including Vietnam, a key US footwear supplier. Yet, while the TPP promised opportunity abroad, it threatened to further erosion at home. Between 1999 and 2012, the production occupations in the United States declined by 32%. The rising wages and the heavy competition from low-cost countries, especially in Asia, put US manufacturers under enormous pressure. The goal here is to find the right balance between American business interests abroad and protecting American interests at home. The US is the world's largest footwear market. It is valued at over $71 billion. That means nearly 28% of the global market. Yet only around 13,000 Americans work in shoe manufacturing, as nearly as 99% of footwear sold in the United States was imported. This industry remains one of the most protected by tariffs, with rates averaging around 10%. This is far above the 1.5% that is average for other consumer goods. So why Vietnam matters? It has emerged as a major player in the global shoe industry. It is now the second largest supplier of the US footwear imports, just behind China. It is mainly focused on low-end assembly. However, its advantages include extremely low wages that average around 51 cents per hour, lax enforcement of labor and environmental protections, and significant government support through subsidies and state-owned enterprises, as well as cheap yarn imported from China. For some, this represents an efficient supply chain, while for others, it is unfair competition and it raises the question of fair trade versus free trade. Free trade prioritizes open markets, lower prices, and global efficiency. It assumes that countries should compete based on their comparative advantages, even if this means lower wages or weaker regulations in some regions. This is why some critics argue that free trade can lead to a race to the bottom. By contrast, fair trade asks whether those differences are actually fair. It cares about labor protections, environmental standards, value-driven competition, and promoting equity across borders. But here, there is also a counter-argument, demanding that countries like Vietnam meet US labor and environmental standards can be seen as a form of Western institutional imposition, one that really slows development. In this light, trade policy is not just about goods and services, it's about whose rules shape the global economy. Nowhere is this divide clearer than between Nike and New Balance, two American companies and two very different views. Nike is a publicly traded company. In 2012, its revenue was of $24 billion. It employs over 37,000 people, but none in production. All of their manufacturing is outsourced abroad. By contrast, New Balance is privately held. It only revenued around $2.4 billion, but it still operates 5 US factories. Its model blends local production with global sourcing. Considering each of these companies' circumstances, it becomes clear why Nike would benefit from a tariff reduction while New Balance wants to preserve the tariffs. This case forces us to confront a deceptively simple question. This case forces us to confront a deceptively simple question. Who is us? In traditional trade debates, the answer was very straightforward. American companies represented American interests. But in a world of global value chains, this logic just no longer holds. So, which firm is more American? The one with the brand and the shareholders, or the one that's employing American workers and sustaining local communities? This question is not just philosophical, it helps shape policy. Because how we define us determines whose interests we protect and whose losses we accept. Is one kind of job more important than another? This brings us to a core policy trade-off. When jobs are inevitably lost to trade, which jobs are we willing to let go and which ones do we fight to keep? From the standpoint of economic development and global competitiveness, high-skilled jobs such as R&D, design, and strategy tend to contribute much more to productivity growth and higher wages. They are seen as a symbol of innovation, and due to their capacity to add value in global chains, they tend to be favored in trade policy. That being said, the loss of low-skilled jobs that are usually production, particularly in regions that are dependent on manufacturing, can have severe socio-economic consequences. In trade policy, this creates a tension between short-term labor protection, which are low-skilled, and long-term economic transformation that can only be achieved through high-skilled jobs. If tariffs are reduced, each of these stakeholders is impacted in a very different way. Let's analyze one by one. Consumers see the clearest upside, lower prices and more variety. Workers, however, are split. The low-skilled workers, especially in manufacturing, face a very steep decline. Meanwhile, high-skilled roles tend to gain as firms reinvest in higher value segments. Among these firms, Nike is the one that would benefit the most. It can reinvest and stay globally competitive. For New Balance, though, that the tariff removal could mean survival risk. For the government, initially, they will lose out on tariff revenue, though this might be offset by gains in other industries or broader trade concessions. And on the other industries, they have also a mixed effect. Some might see gains from market access, while others might suffer if labor standards aren't enforced consistently. As you can see, the distribution of costs and benefits are uneven, and that just makes this decision much more harder. So, what should the US Trade Representative Michael Froman do? He must choose not only what's fair, but what is strategic. Option 1, eliminate the tariffs entirely. This could improve access to global markets, but would also deal a heavy blow to the remaining US footwear manufacturing base. Option 2, maintain the protections that ensure domestic jobs in the short term, but it risks stalling broader TPP negotiations. Can he compromise? Well, if he chooses to reduce the tariffs gradually, he can use them as leverage. It becomes a bargaining chip. Froman could phase out the footwear tariffs in exchange for stronger US access to other sectors, stricter enforcement mechanisms in labor and environmental standards, and he can buy transition time so that firms such as New Balance can adapt their models. In this view, footwear tariffs become a tool, not an obstacle. This case is not just about shoes, it's about strategy, identity, and priorities. In a world of global value change, trade no longer maps neatly into national borders. Firms are global, jobs are mobile, and the benefits are uneven. Policymakers like Froman aren't just choosing between two companies, they are choosing what kind of jobs to protect and which ones to let go, whether tariffs are defensive tools or strategic assets. They are choosing how to balance short-term dislocation with long-term competitiveness. The real question here is not Nike or New Balance. It's what kind of economy do we want to build? Thank you very much.